Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Relationship Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Giovanna. It is so nice recording today. I'm recording on a Saturday, mostly so I can have my Sunday off and I don't have to do anything other than watch Avatar on Netflix. So looking forward to that. But today we're going to be talking about a bunch of different stuff. Mostly in our first two segments, we're going to be discussing commitment and commitment issues. So why is commitment in a relationship important? And, how to address commitment issues and fear of commitment within yourself, or how to notice it within your partner. And then we're going to be talking about some interesting facts about love and relationships that you may not know. And then in the last segment, I'm going to recommend 10 socially distant recommended dates. So all sorts of stuff to be able to make date night a little bit more exciting while still being safe. Commitment. So what is commitment? Commitment is the will to stay together and the will to want to work on the relationship and stay in the relationship. So commitment, is important to have in a relationship and also in an open relationship or a polyamorous relationship because, that's how, the relationship can, grow. If you ever run into issues in a relationship, instead of just breaking up, if you have a commitment and an issue that, or an argument that comes up, you're going to want to, work through the argument and work through that. And commitment is going to help you do that. And commitment is going to be a sort of social contract, between both parties. And problems often arise when there is some sort of, miscommunication between that contract. And often there's, that social construct is never really, or that social contract is never really talked about vocally. So it's kind of like if you think about people who, will get married to kind of fix their relationship or expect their relationship to be different after they become married, by putting a ring on it is not going to change the relationship. So by talking about what you need from the relationship and what you expect from the relationship beforehand, may be able to avoid some of those commitment problems. This will also happen too, like if you think that you guys are exclusive and turns out that may not be what the other person thinks. It's important to address these things, and sometimes that can be really hard because, that question comes up like, what are we? Like usually, if you have to ask, what are we? That may not be the best sign. Or you may be with someone who has some sort of fear of commitment. So that's, when a lot of these issues are going to come about, when people are confused as to what, their social contract is going to include. So the main goal of commitment in relationships is for each party to feel some sense of security and control. Now think about like a business contract. So commitment is like a social contract, but a business contract is going to help, both parties who have signed the contract have some sort of legal backing. So when you have commitment in a relationship, it's going to give you a sense of control. So like you are going to know that that person isn't going to be with anybody else. You know that you guys are exclusive and that, you want to be together and continue to be together. And, this is going to help you feel comfortable, and then it's going to help you have expectations about how your partner should behave. And when they don't behave that way, you have the social backing from other people. So like if you think you guys are exclusive and you have that commitment and they cheat on you, you have that social construct and that social backing saying like they cheated on you, so you can be angry, and that allows you to be angry, and that allows you maybe even to cut off the relationship or whatever. So commitment in the present day is basically going to imply a few things. And the first is going to be loyalty. And the second is a desire to keep the relationship going for the foreseeable future. So like, do you plan your future with this person? Do you see yourself with this person? If those are there, that's probably a good sign you don't have commitment issues. But sometimes too much commitment can be a bad thing. You get into kind of the serial monogamist who really wants to have lots of really intense relationships with people where it's just them, or sometimes you might get too controlling, or if there's too much commitment, or a lot of jealousy will rear its head. So that kind of thing. Relationships can get toxic very quickly because there are going to be expectations that come with commitment. And if that person that you're with is really controlling and uses commitment, quote unquote, as a way of manipulation, they can use it to have control over you. And that's never good. And control is going to happen because you want to feel that autonomy with your partner. You want to have that security. And sometimes what people will do, which is an unhealthy form of commitment, will use their need for security as and use it in a controlling way. And a lot of that does have to do with the type of attachment style that you have, which we have talked on the podcast before. But quick refresher on attachment style. Attachment style is basically how you were raised and how you were treated when you needed something or how attention was given to you. You could have avoidant attachment style, anxious attachment style, or well-adjusted attachment style. And so depending on what your attachment style is going to affect how you react to commitment very heavily. So, if you're someone who has a very anxious attachment style, you're probably going to be someone who is going to want that control and to need that type of security from your partner. And if you're not getting that security, you're going to resort to very controlling, very jealous behavior. And in the end, that's just going to push your partner away, and they're not going to want to have that commitment with you. And we talked about how commitment has a lot of, it's like a social contract. There's not only personal expectations when there is commitment. So like when you label someone as your significant other, there's a lot of expectations that go behind that. But if you don't talk about those expectations, there's going to be arguments that arise. This is very apparent if you're in an open relationship, because in an open relationship, you're always going to have a special emotional commitment to your main person while still being in an open relationship. But that goes the same for a monogamous relationship. You need to have that conversation of what exactly you expect from your partner, or if you're in a relationship where, it's not, you haven't gotten to that next level, if you're with a friends with benefits kind of thing, if condoms can definitely be a part of that conversation. Like, if you're sleeping with other people, like, that's fine, but like, I just ask that we use condoms, or at least you use condoms with other people, that kind of thing. If condoms are necessary in that relationship. So yeah, it's that kind of thing. But there's also going to be social expectations as well. So like, if from other people, again, if you're in an open relationship, those social expectations, an open relationship and a polyamorous relationship can be very strange, and a lot of people aren't going to understand that, maybe. So yeah, when in like the same thing, if you ever go to like a family get together, and your grandma's like, so where's the girlfriend? Where's the boyfriend? When are you going to get one? Blah, 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 blah. It's like that social expectation that we're supposed to, have another person, which isn't great, because there are some people who just aren't looking for that kind of relationship. But it's, you have to be able to talk about what you need from that relationship. And I think that's, probably the most important thing. So commitment is going to be an agreement between both of the parties involved, or all of the parties involved. And it's a very important aspect in a romantic relationship, but it shouldn't take up the entire relationship, because that's when it's going to do more harm than good, and it can quickly dissolve into a very toxic environment and a very toxic and damaging relationship. So it's important to kind of, it's very normal to want security in a relationship. That's what we look for. But it's also important to know that not to take it too far, to establish your wants and your needs in the relationship. And the main thing is always going to be communication. I mean, that's it. It is so important to learn how to communicate with your partner, and to communicate what you need, and to know that it is important to communicate what you need. And if you're someone who's like a people pleaser, or someone who may be afraid to voice their concerns and to voice their needs, that's definitely something to work on. And to work on getting comfortable, because your feelings are validated and your needs are validating. So you need to be able to talk about what you need. And this is going to be in romantic relationships. This is going to be in bed. And this is going to be for everything, at your workplace, at school, with your family. By voicing what is bothering you, and by voicing what you need, and your feelings and everything, one, you're going to be happier, and two, that's going to help you decide who is toxic in your life and who you need to distance yourself from, or at least have a hallmark relationship, or as what I like to call it, which is just, you can send them a card on Christmas and holidays and things like that, but maybe you don't talk to them so much, if they're not going to respect and validate your needs and your feelings. And that's also going to give you more self-confidence, because you are working for yourself, and you are standing up for yourself, because no one else is going to. So by learning how to communicate what you need, and not being afraid of making other people uncomfortable with what you need from a relationship, is really going to help you become happier and help you have happier relationships. So commitment is important. It should not be everything, because that's when, problems arise. But in the next segment, actually, we're going to be talking a little bit about, addressing fear of commitment, because that's, definitely also a big issue that a lot of people have to deal with. If you're someone who doesn't see yourself with people in the future, it can be hard to have a sort of long-term and meaningful relationship. Another tip to combat the overabundance of commitment in a relationship is going to be allowing the person you're with to have the freedom that they deserve. So a lot of that I talked about a little bit in my last episode earlier this week about maintaining independence in relationships. So if you do want to learn more about that, you can check out that episode. But, it's important to have that, autonomy, not only in your relationship, but within yourself. And so by not allowing commitment to completely take over the entire relationship, it's important to be able to give yourself some freedom and to give your partner some freedom. So if you find that you're someone who gets caught up in, overcommitment to a relationship, or maybe are a very jealous person, this could help a lot by just, allowing that person to have some freedom and letting go a little bit, even if it's just baby steps. I recommend for people who might have jealousy issues or overcommitment issues, to explain what you need from the other person to get over those steps. So if it is checking in like every hour, and at first, checking in every hour, texting them, everything like that, or maybe like turning on your location only at certain times of the day, on your phone, but then slowly taking those things away and slowly, stepping away from that. If that person wants to be committed to you, but is a little bit overwhelmed by your overcommitment, start off with something like that, and then learn that that person is not going to do anything or like cheat on you, or that trust is there, and then slowly start taking away, especially if you have overcommitment issues and trust issues from previous relationships. By learning that person is going to be different, and by slowly kind of doing immersion therapy, where you immerse yourself in your fear, and then learning that there really isn't anything to fear at all, you are probably going to be able to get over your overcommitment and your trust and your jealousy problems pretty quickly by being able to do that. So the important thing is to not put it on your partner to fix you and to, tell them to trust you, or to trust them, tell you to trust them. But instead recognizing that you might have some overcommitment problems and overcommitment issues, and asking your partner to work with you, but not to fix it for you. You can ask the people in your life to help you and to adjust so you can learn quicker and to learn to adapt to your natural tendencies quicker, but you should not expect them to do it for you. You still have to do the work. If you need something from your partner, if you need something from other people around you that will help you do that, by all means, you should ask them, but you should not be reliant on them to help you do that. That is going to sum up our first segment. In the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit more about addressing fear of commitment, how to recognize it and how to get over it, and some tips for either yourself or another person. So in this last segment, we kind of talked more about overcommitment. So in the next segment, we're going to be talking about some stuff that is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. So we're going to pause for a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
The GSMC Sex Podcast is a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet. Download the GSMC Sex Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you can find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And welcome back. So in the last segment, we talked a little bit about how sometimes commitment can become overcommitted and how that can lead to some problems. But in this segment, we're going to be focusing more on how to recognize commitment issues and a fear of commitment in yourself and within your partner. Something to keep in mind too, is that your situation, is unique. So sometimes commitment, and how people react to long-term relationships and commitment, can have a lot to do with their history and their family history and how they were taught to view relationships. So if you or someone you love has a fear of commitment or have a major like intimacy issues and things like that, that doesn't mean the relationship is doomed. But, it does help to recognize and notice when it is present in the relationship and what some things there are that you can do to fix that. So the first thing, we're going to talk about the signs that you might see within yourself. So some of those include you don't want to date seriously. So you'd rather date casually, and as soon as, things start getting a little bit more serious, that's when you cut off or you ghost or you just kind of like push away after that. The second one is going to be you don't think about the future of the relationship. Now, in a normal relationship, at some point you are going to want to start thinking at least like, is this someone that I want to spend, time with long term? Like, can I see myself moving in with this person? Can I see myself dating this person for a long time, getting more serious, possibly even marriage, like stuff like that. But if you're not thinking about that at all, that might be a sign that you might have some sort of commitment issues. And then, the next one is you spend a lot of time questioning the relationship. So you're going to say things to yourself like, do they really love me? What does this relationship mean to them? Am I ready for a serious relationship? And do I really want this to work? So if you're constantly questioning the relationship, the validity of the relationship, that might be, you are going to question sometimes, and especially if you do have some sort of trust issues and things like that. But, if it's constant, that's something that you should probably look into. And then the next one is you don't want to make plans. So like if they ask you if they want to if you want to go out on a date, sometimes you'd be like, oh, I don't really know. Like maybe at some point I'll let you know. I'll keep you updated. Would you rather do stuff kind of last minute, and does do thinking about plans stress you out and you just want to cancel them if you do end up making them? So sometimes this can suggest that you're really not that interested to begin with. So if you're not that interested to begin with, you probably don't want to have some sort of commitment with them. Next one is going to be you don't feel emotionally attached. So let's say you're seeing someone and, you guys have a great time together, but, you don't really feel that emotionally grounded to them. Like you really could care less if you never see them again, basically, and you could just, keep doing what you're doing. But sometimes that could mean just simply that you guys aren't a great match. But if you find that it's happening consistently and that you never really get emotionally attached to someone and you're just easily able to just cut them out of your life, like quick and easy, that might be a sign of a problem with commitment. Because usually when people start getting attached, that means they want to have that commitment to ease that anxiety of, wanting of the thought of them leaving them and going away. Now, if you don't have that at all, you're probably just not even interested. And if you find that you're always not that interested in someone and you could care less if you end up being with them long term, that might be a commitment thing. The next one is you feel uneasy or trapped when your partner shows signs of investment. Now, these can sometimes come up, these feelings can come up without any warning, and you might have this urge to like get away from the relationship and get out of the relationship as soon as possible. Now, for example, if your partner says, I love you for the first time, at first you might feel happy, but like later you just get super anxious and you think about it and you feel like this might not be what you want, or, if it's true and you don't want to, be that person to be in love in quotations. And so that might freak you out a little bit, and then you kind of just shut off. And you might even say that you love them back, in the moment, because in the moment, you might be happy about it, but, as soon as you start thinking about it, that's when you get a little stressed out, a little anxious, and things like that. So as soon as they start, your partner starts making moves towards being, towards a committed relationship, you might start to pull away and pull back and try to push them away, to avoid that kind of commitment. So those are all examples of commitment issues within yourself. Now moving on is signs of commitment issues in your partner. And you can also use these examples too to figure out like, oh, I've had other people tell me this about being with me. You can also obviously use these as examples of commitment issues within yourself if you're still not sure, or if none of those other ones really apply to you. So the first one is going to be they don't seem invested in the relationship or in you. And this can come up in a few different ways. So let's say they know all of your friends, but you don't know any of their friends, or maybe they've met your family, but you haven't met their family. Maybe they have a lack of interest in future plans. So if you mention or talk about planning a trip or something like that, or a vacation, they might be very enthusiastic, but then get really flaky when you start talking about, specific dates and bookings and stuff like that. So it's that kind of thing. They could also be really interested in your stories, or maybe not at all, but don't really share any of their feelings, or, the exact opposite. So yeah, it just can show up in a few different ways, but it's just a general lack of interest in the relationship, and not really putting anything else into the relationship, and not matching your energy that you are bringing to the relationship. And if you find that you would like to enter a more committed relationship with the person that you're with, and they seem to be showing some of these signs, you can always have a conversation with them too. That might be difficult sometimes, especially if you are more attached to them than they are to you. But sometimes, for the health of yourself, it's sometimes just better to move on. But yeah, so moving on, they don't want to talk about the future of the relationship. This is a perfect example of why it may be difficult to have that conversation with them if they truly have a fear of commitment. Because they might just have vague replies, like when you bring up to them. So like if you start talking to them about moving on with the possibility of, making the next step in your relationship, they might blow it off. They might just say like, oh, I don't really want to define things. I don't really want to, go in that direction. Even though you guys have maybe been talking for months and going on dates and stuff, and you have fun and you're compatible, but they really don't want to even talk about having that conversation of making the relationship a little bit more exclusive and a little bit more serious. So yeah. And moving on to the next one, they have a hard time opening up or sharing deep thoughts. Now, in a normal, open and healthy relationship, there's going to be emotional vulnerability there, because it helps people become closer. But if they have commitment issues, they're not going to want to be emotionally vulnerable, because they may not even be emotionally attached. They may not be allowing themselves to be emotionally attached. But in the strong relationships, you're going to be talking about, fears and childhood experiences your views on life and your goals for the future and that kind of thing. But if you find that, the person that you're dating, they have a really difficult time opening up about that kind of thing, it might be because they have that mental block, they have that wall up where they aren't allowing themselves to get that type of deeper connection with you. So the next one is a big ringer. They talk about the future, but their plans doesn't involve you. So this is really easy to feel hurt. For me, this is something that I fall into the trap of when I am in relationships with people. And so yeah, for me at least, because I can speak more personally, especially on this one, because I've had people tell me this before, is, if you picture yourself as an independent person, you're going to be making these plans and you're going to do these plans. And if these people want to be in your life, you just hey, you're more than welcome to come, but I'm going to do this. And, they might have a hard time including you in those future plans. For me, it's always been implied oh, sure, you can, come along, but I'm going to do this stuff just so you know, so that's always been this has always been a big one for me. And the last one for recognizing if your partner has commitment issues is if, they don't reply to your calls or your texts for days. So you might think that, or at least feel that you're being ghosted, or maybe you actually do get ghosted, or maybe they will reply to you just days later. So this can be a sign of emotional unavailability if they aren't allowing themselves to be emotionally available, especially if they're just completely ignoring you for days on end and just not answering any of your texts or calls, and you don't know if they fell off the face of the earth or what. But yeah, so let's say you might think that you have commitment issues. Here are some ways that you can overcome a fear of commitment. It's also important to keep in mind, if you do have a fear of commitment, that doesn't mean it's going to be, the end of the world, or you're only going to have unhealthy, unsatisfying relationships. Now, there are plenty of people who are perfectly fine with just being single and not settling down and just dating, random people that you'll meet. There are also people who are perfectly happy having a polyamorous relationship. And so there are ways to have commitment issues and still, participate in fulfilling relationships. So the first one, though, if you do want to develop a better commitment and commitment style, attachment style, get over your fear of commitment, so you can have a type of relationship that you would like to have if none of those other options really are, sticking with you. But the first one is going to be just individual therapy. So I am a huge proponent of therapy, and it's a great place to start. It's going to be a great place to learn about attachment issues. And you can always try to interview and find a counselor or therapist who focuses on commitment and attachment and relationships. I mean, there are plenty of them out there. So they are going to help you overcome that anxiety with commitment and try to figure out a better way for you to have a more healthy and sustainable long-term relationship without having that judgment there and without having, those, it's going to be more empathetic. I mean, it's literally their job to, talk to you and hear you out and validate your feelings. And the next one, this is going to be if you're already in a relationship, is going to be couples therapy. I mean, if you really want to make the relationship work, but you feel yourself moving away, maybe because you've done it in the past and you know that is where the relationship is headed, definitely talk to your significant other about maybe doing couples therapy. I would love to interview a couples therapist for this podcast, so I'm hoping those, that will happen soon. But it can definitely help, and you can learn about intimacy and you can learn about commitment with your partner, and they can help you navigate as someone who is a third party, someone who is completely out of the relationship, help you get through those troubles. And the next one is going to be just talk about it. If you're able to put a name to your fear of commitment, if you're able to call it what it is and talk about it openly with your partner, it's going to help you understand it and hopefully get better and form a better relationship. It's really important while you're having this conversation is to tell your partner how you really feel about them, and that, maybe you went through a really bad breakup, or, you lived through a very bad divorce or something like that, and maybe explain to them that you really do love them and you want to be with them, but you have issues explaining that and showing that through commitment and through intimacy. And how ways that you can do that is going to be by practicing commitment. Now, I'm getting this information from a article that was published on Healthline, and it's called How to Recognize and Get Over Commitment Issues, and it's written by Timothy J. Legg, it was medically reviewed by Timothy J. Legg, and it was written by Crystal Raypole, and it was published September 30th, 2019. And September 30th is my birthday. That's crazy. But I'm going to just read these straight from the article because they are great habits to practice with your partner if you are someone who is trying to get over commitment. So here are these. The first is going to be spend the night together. Spend a weekend together a few miles out of your town. Hold hands in public or around people that you know. Talk about things you'd like to do together in a different season and see how that feels. For example, maybe you both want to think about making some camping plans next summer. Make plans together a week, 2 weeks, and then a month in advance. Challenge yourself to keep those plans. Look at apartments or houses together if that's where your relationship is headed. And this can be as simple as taking a walk in your neighborhood you like and thinking about what it would be like to share that space with your partner. And lastly, if feelings of fear or anxiety come up for you as you do these, you should talk through them with your partner and be present with your feelings and examine them and ask yourself why they popped up. Because there's a reason why they popped up, because you felt that way. And also for the whole apartment thing, even if you just go on Zillow or apartments.com or like Facebook Marketplace has like rentals and stuff, just like sending them back and forth to your partner and like talking about like, oh, well, like what if we were to move in together? That kind of thing. If that relationship is in a good spot for that. And lastly, it's going to, this is going to be the last step to getting over that fear of commitment. It's going to be look for a partner who respects your needs. Now, you're going to need someone who is going to be able to work with you through their commitment. Again, as I've said before, they are not in charge of fixing your commitment issues, but they should be a good partner for you is going to be someone who is willing to help you work through that and do some of the things that you need. For example, like those habits that I read off for you. It's also really important to consider the type of lifestyle of someone you'd like to date when you do have commitment issues. So would you like to date someone who isn't going to need to spend every evening with you or every day with you? Maybe someone who has a really busy lifestyle, or maybe someone who travels a lot, something like that, something that has a very demanding job and they can't see you that often. So that kind of thing. Maybe they live, close, but, not too close. So maybe like if they live an hour away or something like that, where, you would only see them once or maybe twice a week at first. And then also if you have issues with like physical affection and touching and stuff like that, to be with someone who is a little bit more hands off and someone who doesn't really need that physical touch, love language, to feel loved and to feel like you love them. So someone, if you're trying to get over your fear of commitment, it's important to think about the person that you're going to be with and, how they can, how that person's lifestyle can also help you get over that fear of commitment. So when you are ready to move forward, you can make those plans later. But at first, at least, it will be comfortable for the both of you to not be together all the time. It's important to keep in mind if you are someone who has a fear of commitment or commitment issues, or someone in your life is really struggling with that, that it really is common, and it can come in all sorts of different forms of fear of commitment. And also it doesn't make long-term relationships impossible. You just have to put a little bit extra work into it. There needs to be healthy communication. You need to learn how to communicate, and how to express your feelings and what you need from your partner. And, you have to be honest with that too. And that can be really hard for someone who is dealing with, a commitment issue. But as long as you're open and honest, I think that's when you can have that healthy relationship. But if you're dating someone who isn't ready to have that, it might be better for you to kind of step away from that relationship, especially if you are more interested in them than they are into you. That might really be damaging in the future. So definitely something to consider. But yeah, it can vary from person to person. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, be kind to yourself. But yeah, that is going to conclude this segment. And the next segment, though, I'm going to be talking about some cool relationship and love facts that you may not have known. Some of them are kind of weird. And then we're going to end off the show with some socially distant checked dates. So they are going to be socially distant safe dates. Yeah, that's a better way to say that. Anyway, we are going to pause for a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
So in this segment, we're going to be talking about some interesting facts about love that you may not know. The source for this segment was a Bored Panda article called 20 Interesting Facts About Love That You May Not Know. So the first one is going to be that monogamous relationships exist throughout the animal kingdom. So all sorts of different animals will have mating partners for life. A big example is a lot of birds do. So like swans, geese, there's like, according to this article, they have black vultures and albatrosses, but also wolves and even termites. I know that dolphins have really weird sexual acts, like they will actually rape other dolphins and rape other animals, which is really strange. But I think they will also have mates, and they have also found that dolphins can actually be gay in the wild too. So interesting stuff about animals and relationships in the animal kingdom. So the next one is it only takes up to 4 minutes to decide whether or not you like someone. So this has a lot of psychology behind it as far as first impressions. So like, for example, if you are going to be being interviewed, the best position is either the first person or the last person, because those are the ones who are going to be remembered the most. So first impressions, mean a lot, but this article is actually kind of confusing and misleading because, yes, you decide whether or not you like someone based on the first 4 minutes, but if you keep meeting them and keep talking to them, if each time let's say the first time you meet them, you decide you don't like them, but if you keep talking to them and keep spending time with them, the most recent event that occurred to you is going to be how you think of that person. So that can change over time, but first impressions are still important. And like I said, if you're being interviewed, you want to try to get either the very first slot or the very last spot, because those are going to be the people who are going to be remembered the most. Moving on, this says when two people stare in each other's eyes, their heart rates will synchronize. And there has been research that has proven this. So like basically they just hook people up to a bunch of cords and stuff, and they had them stare into another person's eyes. This is also an exercise that can be used a lot in couples therapy. But you'll just sit across from each other, look into the person's eyes, like directly into their eyes. It can be a little awkward, but eventually after a few minutes, your heart rates is going to synchronize, and it actually takes up to about 3 minutes for that to happen. And this one says lovers or people who are in love, but I'm pretty sure there's been studies that the same thing will happen with strangers too, that you can just look at someone right in the eyes and both of your heart rates are going to sync up, which is so cool. So the next one is, falling in love has neurological effects similar to those of cocaine. So we've kind of talked about this a little bit, before, but falling in love will release, all these types of different hormones and chemicals into your brain. A big chemical that is responsible for that is oxytocin, and it's otherwise known as the love hormone. That will be released when you have certain types of human contact, and it affects bonding in two people. So oxytocin and other endorphins and stuff like that can also be released when you're doing stimulants and drugs such as cocaine, that is a stimulant, and it can have the same effect. Pretty interesting. It basically, when they take MRIs of the brain, it looks the same as someone who's on cocaine compared to someone who is in love and falling in love and that kind of thing. So number 5 is cuddling releases natural painkillers. Again, oxytocin comes in, and oxytocin can also help with pain and things like that. And actually, there has been studies that shows that we as people need a certain amount of physical contact a day. I think it was like we need 8 hugs a day or something, and it releases this oxytocin chemical that helps with pain and anxiety and stress. And one study actually showed that it can decrease headaches, and some will show that it might even make the pain completely go away after 4 hours. That oxytocin is a really strong chemical, and it shows up a lot in physical relationships and romantic relationships and stuff like that. So the next one is, even looking at a picture of a loved one can sometimes relieve pain. So how they figured this one out is they did an experiment where they showed study participants who were experiencing pain. They showed them pictures of their beloved, and they distracted them with word games too. And their pain was reduced far more than those exposed to the same distracting word games and pictures of acquaintances. So like the control group was, they were both experiencing some sort of pain, probably like a small shock is what they do, or like a pinch or something. And then they would have their, rate of pain ranked after that, and the ones that were showed pictures of somebody they love versus the people who were showed just strangers or acquaintances, or were trying to get distracted with word games, those people who saw pictures of their significant other or somebody that they love very much romantically, their pain was lower than those who didn't. So interesting. And the next one, people at the same level of attractiveness are more likely to end up together. So this has a lot of psychological and social research behind it. And this was something that I learned when I was studying psychology. For example, my teacher gave us the example in class is that take a look at your friends. So your friends that you are surrounded with are usually on the same level of attractiveness that you are. So if you think that all of your friends are hot, but you're not, that basically, because of the matching hypothesis, it probably is you're just being really hard on yourself and you are just as hot as your friends, because you are more likely to be friends with someone who, with other people who match your attractiveness level. So super interesting. But yeah, you are more attracted to those that share the same level of attractiveness with and are equally more socially desirable. So those are the people that you are going to match yourself up with. And the next one. Couples who are too similar to each other are not likely to last. So research will prove that, couples that are either too similar or too different tend to not last very long, because there needs to be a foundation of similarities, but there also needs to be things that you two can learn from each other. My best example for this is I don't like spicy food. I can't do it. I guess I'm just the basic white girl. A medium chicken wing or like General Tso chicken is about as spicy as I can go. Just recently I was on a date with someone and, I accidentally got the wrong dish, and I had ordered a barbecue chicken roll and I got a hot sauce in the chicken. So, I didn't want to send it back because of COVID and we were eating outside and, I don't want to do that. It's socially awkward. And so we were just able to switch. So we just switched our food and it was fine. But you always need someone that has, some opposites to you that you can take from each other in anything like that. So this next one we've actually kind of talked about a little bit before in some previous episodes. Heartbreak is not just a metaphor. So research has provided evidence that intense traumatizing events such as a breakup, divorce, loss of a loved one, physical separation from a loved one, or betrayal can cause real physical pains in the area of one's hearts. And this is actually called broken heart syndrome. Deep emotional distress triggers the brain to disrupt certain chemicals that significantly weakens one's hearts, which can lead to chest pains. And some people have also often been misdiagnosed with actually having a heart attack. So older people, especially, you'll see this where their significant other of a very long time has just passed away. And days later, they will also get admitted into the hospital for a heart attack. But when looking further, there's nothing wrong with their heart. And that is broken heart syndrome, and it's actually a real thing. So pretty interesting. The next is romantic love eventually ends, only to be followed by committed love. So these are people that you see that have been together for years, and you're like, how did they even make that work? Well, couples at the very beginning of a romantic relationship will be different year after year. And if you think about it too, our cells regenerate every 7 years. So if you're with someone 7 years later, they are physically different. Like their cells have, recycled themselves and changed themselves out and regenerate. And so, that person that you're with, they're literally made up of different stuff, which is just so cool. But basically, it is estimated that romantic love, which is linked with euphoria, dependence, butterflies, and like that falling in love feeling, only lasts about a year. And after that first year begins the so-called committed love stage, and then the transition is linked with elevated neurotrophin protein levels in newly formed couples. So again, love is a very physical thing that happens. Like it changes the chemicals in your brain. It changes a lot of different things. And so, it's interesting the different levels of love that we go through, especially when we're in a long-term relationship. So moving on. People who are in love have chemical similarities with people with OCD. So studies have shown that people at an early stage of love have lower levels of serotonin, which is associated with feelings of happiness and well-being, and higher levels of cortisol associated with stress. And sometimes when we hear stress, we think of it as like this bad thing that always happens, but there is good stress. Now think about if you just got a big promotion at work. And you're really happy because you got a raise, but, more money, more problems. Now you have more responsibilities. So that is an example of good stress. Or like buying a new car or moving into a new house. Like these are all examples of good stress. They're still stressful, but it could be good stress. And love can still be sometimes considered good stress. And in other relationships, it should sometimes isn't considered good stress. But these levels of chemicals in your brain is similar to those people who are living with obsessive compulsive disorder. And this might explain why we act different sometimes when we are falling in love with someone. So, and then vice versa, people with lower levels of serotonin when they fall in love and get into sexual relationships quicker than others. So if you are someone who has a lower, naturally has lower serotonin, and you have lower serotonin if you suffer with depression and stuff like that, because serotonin is our happy chemical, you are more likely to get into a relationship to try to get, to get that boost of serotonin. So moving on, thinking of love and sex influences creativity, concrete thinking. This is compared to some more thinking about more abstract stuff like long-term relationships, devotion, commitment, and intimacy. They don't really produce more creative thinking and more abstract thinking. But when somebody thinks about long-term plans, when someone thinks about sex and love, that is going to help someone focus more on momentary details than on long-term plans and goals. So it's interesting because, it basically everything that we think about is going to affect our brain. That's why I'm such a big proponent of kind of tricking your brain into being healthier. So like a lot of people will do this if you have a serious mental illness or something like that. So people who are who will do self-harm, it is recommended that when you get that urge to practice self-harm, instead get like a thing of ice and like press it on your skin or do something like that. But that is tricking your brain into thinking that you're doing what you want to do while not harming yourself. And so again, changing your thought patterns, tricking your brain into forming better habits that are more healthier than the habits that you may have now. that aren't as healthy and are a little bit more damaging. So yeah, that is going to conclude this segment. But in the next segment, I want you to stick around because I'm going to be talking about some 10 social distancing dating ideas that you can do because right now it might be kind of hard. I know a lot of places are still closed, or, you know, you might want to do stuff that, you know, you haven't been able to do in a while. Like, you know, if you have date nights regularly, but that COVID has kind of disrupted that, here's some cute date night ideas that you can try. But we will be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. So this segment is going to be all about socially distant date ideas. If you'd rather hear about this or actually rather read about this, I actually did a blog about this one at lovebirds.app. That is a dating app that I write for. And yeah, I did a whole a listicle on this. So if you'd like to check this out and read it, you can definitely, go to lovebirds.com, and I write a whole bunch of other stuff on there too. So yes, so the first one is going to be a beach or a lake date, if you're not near a beach, but maybe more a lake. So yeah, this is going to be, I live very close to Lake Erie. And so for me, at least, it's been really easy to socially distance whenever I go to the beach there. Even though it is kind of smelly. Lake Erie smells like dead fish a lot, but what are you going to do? So if you are near a beach, I know some places like down in Florida, we've all seen those pictures with like just people crowded on the beach. So maybe not do that, but if you are like, near a lake or a beach or something, you can go there and it's pretty easy to social distance. Also, anything that is going to be outdoor, you're going to have a better chance of being able to socially distance and a lesser time of spreading any potential germs and stuff like that. And then what you can do is, get a towel, get like a beach blanket, get something cute like that. You can go get some chilled wine or chilled champagne, get some takeout. Like, that's so cute. Watch the sunset. I love it. How romantic, and then you can go on a beach or a walk along the water. Like, oh, I love it. So cute. Highly recommend. Go try it. And the next one is going to be go for a hike. So not only you get to work up a sweat and be active instead of sitting inside, and you get to enjoy the views, and that's going to be some quality time. Be time for you to put the phones away and stuff like that, and really talk to each other. So yeah, and keep in mind too, if the place that you're going to has public restrooms and how often they're being cleaned. And, if they don't, though, make sure to have a shorter hike and to plan accordingly. And according to the CDC, you can hike and it's a good option for social distancing. But like if you ever get in contact with other hikers, make sure to bring a mask so you can put that mask on too. So an outdoor bar or coffee shop. So a lot of my favorite restaurants and coffee shops and everything are now offering outdoor seating. I'm not that comfortable with indoor seating just yet, at least for me, because I know around me most of the restaurants are open or partially open for indoor seating, but I don't really know how I feel about that. So I have been going to places where outdoor seating is available, and then I just go inside to like order, and I'll have my mask on inside, and then I'll take my mask off once I go outside. And in my opinion, what I've found is that the easiest way to figure out if your favorite restaurant, bar, cafe is offering outdoor seating is on their Facebook page, because if you just Google it, you know, there are like those Google pages will pop up, but those aren't really up to date or accurate. So, but I've found that most businesses are really up to date with their Facebook page. So you can check their Facebook page, or you can just call them, or just drive right by. So, you know, some options for you. And the next one is thrifting, or any type of shopping. You know, I've gone to TJ Maxx a few times, but like thrifting is also really fun. Just be sure to wash everything before you use it and everything. But you know, you never know what you could find with just get your significant other and go out to Savers or Goodwill or something like that and try to find some cool, fun stuff, because some areas it's hard. It's easier than others to find really cool stuff in thrift stores. But you know, you never know. Maybe if you could find some furniture that you could upcycle, and you know, sometimes the only thing that they need is like a good sanding and a new paint job, and then it looks brand spanking new. So yeah, the next one is going to be having a craft day. Now I've seen this on some videos online about this, where like they go to Target and they pick out a craft or like something that they think that the other person is going to like, and then they surprise them with it, and then they'll both have craft night. Now, even if you are not crafty, I'm not crafty at all, it's fun to just pick out that stuff and laugh at each other's attempt at making like pottery or something, you know? So even if you just make a silly thing that isn't the best quality, you know, just having that and like putting it on a mantle somewhere to laugh at, I think is super cute and a lot of fun. And then the next one is going to be cocktail or an ice cream night if you're not into the alcoholic beverages. Now, there's this amazing website called makemeacocktail.com. What you do is you put in all of the liquors, all of the alcohols, all of the spirits, wines, mixers, everything into this website. And it tells you what you have in your house. And it also could be like garnishes, if you have those. And it tells you, based on what you have in your liquor cabinet and in your kitchen, what type of cocktails you can make. So, it gives you the recipes too. So if you're missing like going out to your favorite bar with your significant other, or having a date with your significant other at the bar and like ordering cool cocktails, you can figure out how to make your own with what you have right in your kitchen. And I think that's cool. But if you're not, if you don't drink or your partner doesn't drink, you can do the same thing with an ice cream night. Go to the grocery store and get a bunch of different types of ice creams, get all the different syrups and, toppings, and like, I know at Froyo, like if you ever go to Froyo and stuff, they have all of those crazy toppings. Like they have snow caps and like the mini brownie bites and stuff. Like you can get all that stuff at the grocery store and make your own sundae and have a blast. And then the next one is going to be road trip. So this is going to be the safest way to travel by far. Now, traveling is not a very low risk thing to do right now. But if you really want to travel and you really want to itch that traveling bug, road trip is going to be by far your safest option. Also, I would look into if you have to quarantine where you're at, if you are road tripping, and take into account your state's numbers and your county's COVID numbers before you decide to plan a trip. But like, for example, for me, I live in the state of New York, and I can travel freely with all of the northeastern states. So like New Hampshire, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maine, Vermont and Massachusetts. You can travel freely in between without having to quarantine. So it might be similar in your area. So definitely check that out. Do some research. You don't want to go somewhere and then realize that you have to quarantine for 2 weeks when you come back. And you're like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to go back to work and that kind of thing. So definitely research. Another thing I would recommend too, if you check the county's numbers that you'll be driving through and try to stop for gas and to eat and stuff like that in counties that are lower risk and that have lower numbers. And always, as always, wear your mask, wash your hands, bring hand sanitizer. Although washing your hands is going to be more effective. Hand sanitizer is great in a pinch, but you should still be washing your hands often as well. And the next one, I love this idea. Have a movie night. Now, there are going to be a few different ways that you can have a movie night. My first recommendation is just stay at home, and that this is probably going to be the most easiest way for everyone. But YouTube how to make stovetop popcorn, because I love stovetop popcorn. I can't eat any other popcorn anymore unless it's from the movie theaters. But I grew up on it, and there are recipes online and YouTube videos that can show you how to make stovetop popcorn, and it's going to be the best popcorn you've ever had. And then you can make a little fort, set a bunch of pillows and blankets on the floor, and pick out a movie. And if there isn't anything on Netflix or Amazon Video or Hulu or whatever you use that you want to watch, you can always rent like the brand new movies that come out online that you haven't seen, as all of the movie theaters are closed and you can't see the new movies anymore, which I think is the thing I miss the most, is going to the movie theaters. But the next option is a lot of drive-in movie theaters are really doing well right now. And drive-in movie theaters actually still do exist. There's, I think, maybe 200, across the country, in the US at least. And so for me, the closest drive-in is like an hour away from me. So if I really wanted to go to the drive-in, I could, but it's like, do I want to drive an hour? But, maybe for you, you would like to drive an hour and have that experience, especially if you've never gone through a drive-in before. Where I grew up, we had a drive-in that's closed now, but it was only like 20 minutes away from where I lived. And I remember seeing movies as a kid, and we actually brought popcorn with us, our stovetop popcorn with us, and we like hid it under the blankets, and then we got to eat popcorn while we got to the drive-thru. And, I was little and I got to play around in the grass and stuff. And this is a great option for being able to see newer movies and being able to go to the movie theaters, but while being safe, because they do have bathrooms and stuff there, but you can always plan accordingly and like use the bathroom before if that kind of freaks you out a little bit. But yeah, that's a really cool option for you, especially if you've never experienced a drive-in before. Number 4 is going to be take an online, number 4, I meant number 9, is going to be take an online class together. The cool thing about COVID and everything shutting down is that there has been a lot of online classes being offered. Like you can take, the Zoom University kind of thing where you take a class online. And you can enjoy that with your partner. So there's going to be like art classes online if you want to do like I know some people will have will teach you how to paint and, with a glass of wine and stuff like that. Or you can make it even easier because you can pull up a Bob Ross episode and have a Bob Ross themed painting party and have and do that. But this online class could be anything. And so you can always take that together. I think it's always so fun taking a class with your significant other because it also teaches you how to work together and you gain a lot of skills from that. And the last one, number 10, is going to be have a game night. Even if it's a virtual game night with your friends, you can have a Zoom meeting with all of your friends, or maybe have a double date and have with another couple that you guys enjoy and like hanging out with that maybe you haven't seen in a while, and have a game night. Do Cards Against Humanity, or there's a lot of apps now. Like I think you can play Uno virtually now, and I'm sure you can figure out a way to play like all these other games virtually. But yeah, you can always have a game night with your significant other and, yeah, enjoy that time. But anyway, let me know if you try any of these dates. I would love to see if you, tried them and if you like them and how they turned out. But yeah, that is going to conclude the podcast. As always, it would be so very cool if you could subscribe on Apple iTunes and give us a rating and review, and follow or like our pages on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm pretty quick to respond to people who message me on those. So if you would like to request a topic or just ask me a question, would like me to clarify on something, I will totally answer. So yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Relationship Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network, and I hope you guys have a great week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.